It's my privilege to introduce Paul Bennun, the Chief Creative Officer of Somethin Else. He and his firm have done 3 of the last 4 BBC games. The BBC is the main British broadcaster, so he's intimately familiar with the difficulties of doing games with a large entertainment brand. Paul and his company have been nominated 8 times for BAFTA Awards, the British Oscar. My perspective, I'm an American, and have won 4 times, including for Production Company of the Year, Video Game of the Year, and also for last year for a television show. Somethin Else is active in video games, social media, and television radio media, and is the biggest cross-platform supplier of media in the UK. So welcome, Paul.
Wow. We sound all right, which is kind of strange. No, I've got to also say a couple of things. First of all, this isn't a lectern, it's more like a pulpit. So I might, start getting evangelical or something. And so I'm here to talk about this. Now, if you're British, you know what this is, and it's awesome. It's Doctor Who, and it's a thing that most of us grew up with on and off forever, really. It's a science fiction show. It's absolutely huge. It's one of the BBC's top 3 export brands, along with Top Gear, which is like Doctor Who for people who think Gamergate is a good idea. And the BBC wanted a video game, and they turned to us. Now, it's an educational video game. And I think my talk, I don't know if you saw the last one, but my talk sort of segues quite well from the last one in a funny way. Because educational video games aren't a new thing. This is a very sophisticated audience. I could go on and talk a lot about how one makes a game in terms of education, but I suspect that people probably know quite a bit about that anyway. So one thing I'm going to talk about, or 2 things I'm going to talk about specifically, are these 2 things. How you make a video game that teaches people how to code, specifically, and how you turn a TV brand into a game, and the irritating things that can come along out there. Very quick show of hands, who has ever done any engineering or software hands-on? Who's written a line of code? Right, okay. Loads of people. So, you know that writing code can be really irritating. It's an exercise in frustration as much as anything else. And games also are about, they're about circumscribing fun. There's a great sort of Ian Bogost quote, talks about the difference between like golf and other games. Like, if golf didn't have any artificial limitations, you would walk around just dropping golf balls into holes. But no, we've got to make it more interesting than that. We've actually got to get long sticks and hit the balls for absolutely, hundreds of meters in order to make it more fun. So these things aren't necessarily what you want in an educational context. How do you do that? And then finally, the second thing again is if you're working with a broadcaster, I'll come on to talk about it in greater depth. Broadcasters are broadcasters. Okay. Who made this game? This game was commissioned by BBC Wales and CBBC. Doctor Who's actually a BBC Wales production. We were incredibly lucky to be working with people at a broadcaster who passionately cared about games, understood how to make them, and really enjoyed it. So Somethin Else was introduced to the process about 2 years after the project had started, when they'd already set some of the parameters as I'll talk about. But we designed it, developed it, devised it, and built it. The international context, coding, as you must have seen again from the last presentation, is everywhere. Everybody wants to learn how to code now. In sort of Western post-industrial society, it's because if we don't start doing things with our brains, our economies are buggered. That's a technical word. So in the UK, the government's curriculum has just changed from let's teach kids how to make bad PowerPoint presentations to let's teach kids how to actually code, how to actually get done in dirty in front of code. And it's a similar thing across the world. But of course, kids are already coding. They're coding a lot. This is Scratch, which is a fantastic sort of very simple visual development environment where you're given a kind of a small sort of list of instructions that you can drag into a space and start building your own code very, very visually. It's very, very powerful, actually. You've got collision detection, you've got sprite control, you've got very advanced logic, but it's very, very simple. This is already being used in schools. MIT made it. Go MIT. I think that's right. And this is a screenshot of Minecraft. It's there to show that Minecraft isn't just an environment where you can make amazing objects inside that can use logic. I mean, I've seen people make a field programmable gate array, which is effectively like, it's a universal piece of code, a universal processor, and they've modeled that inside Minecraft. And if you can do that, you can do pretty much anything. And of course, you can also get under the hood, because coding isn't just about writing code that isn't bug-free. In fact, coding is also about hacking to death other people's code, getting your hands dirty, making mistakes for yourself, and learning how things work. The process of hacking, the process of bug fixing is as important to learning code as anything else. And the kids are already doing that. The BBC didn't want us to do specifically that. What the BBC wanted to do was, at the beginning of the what's called Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 coding curriculum in the UK, they wanted to excite new audiences who were coming to coding for the first time and introduce the idea and the concept of code to them so they could enjoy it. They went away, they did their research, and their research said, the kids love platform games. Go and make us a platform game. And also, between the platform levels, can we have these things called puzzle junctions where you have to solve a coding problem to continue? And again, we're getting back to that issue. Platform game, oh, this is fun, this is fun, this is fun. Logic, no. So how you make that interesting and entertaining was wow. Okay, I'm not sure what's happened there. There's a circular. So the way that we decided to solve it, this isn't not even a proper Venn diagram anymore. What we realized and what we believed very strongly was that to solve this set of problems properly, you have to unite narrative, gameplay, and education. The educational objectives have to emerge from the gameplay, be a part of the gameplay, not just an interruption, and they also have to belong intrinsically to the narrative as well. I mean, narrative's a funny thing in games. We can talk about that for hours as well. But what we wanted to do was make something that was intrinsically great gameplay, educational, and with a good, strong Doctor Who story, but find a way to make the game unite all of those things, and that's the way that we thought that we were going to win. Loving these circles. So all games have a loop. This was our game loop, and it's how we solved that issue that I've just described. You have a platform game. You come across, that says impasse. It did when I left it anyway. You come across, you get stuck because your avatar doesn't have a physical capability to advance in the game. And the way that you solve that is by something emerges from the narrative of the game where you have a logic puzzle, a coding problem that you have to solve, and that gives your avatar the physical capability to get past the impasse. So this is a tiny bit of the game. Oh, please work. That was a fantastic piece of video from the game. I'm sure you enjoy that very well. So here's an example. So you played the level, and you come up to a door, and the words there say, "My weapon's power is insufficient to destroy this door." Yeah, you're a Dalek. That's awesome. What you do is you then have to solve a coding problem to collect the MacGuffin, which is the thing up there, which is a narrative device which you just have to have in order to upgrade your Dalek. And what that does is it gives you the ability to open the door and you advance. So that's very briefly, that's the game loop in action. Now the coding problems. The coding problems, again, as I mentioned, were tied very strongly to Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 curriculum in the UK. And effectively what that means is getting a list at the very beginning, it's get a list of instructions, execute them in sequence to achieve an outcome. That's the most simple form of code that you can get. This instruction, that instruction, this instruction, that instruction. Run them in the list. If the right instruction is in the right order, the thing will happen. So this is, well, actually that's a slightly more complicated one. And then gradually as you move through the process of learning how to code, you're going to first of all deal with things like variables. You know, do this thing 3 times. Well, I can change the amount of time this thing happens, and that's effectively a variable in the context of the game. And then you're going to have things like slightly more complex Boolean logic. If this thing is happening, do this, else do that. And then, of course, you can start combining all these different things, and that effectively is code. Well, it's my code anyway. You just get a list of very simple forms of logic, forms of instruction, variables, and you stick them together in the right way, and things work. So these are examples of the. This is an example of the very most simple piece of code that you can do in the doctrine of dialect, which is effectively just a linear thing where you can have some control of the variables of the different parameters. Now, there's lots of issues with this, loads of big problems. I've already mentioned one of them, which is that the point of a game is to give artificial limitations, artificial impediments to you doing your thing. You actually try and make it hard and frustrating for someone to do something. And then when you get over that, you feel awesome. But coding is the opposite, or teaching coding, you don't necessarily want to frustrate people because people work in a different way when they're coding. How do you do that? And there was also another issue as well, which is, this is where we're starting to get into some of the pragmatic issues of making a game. The BBC had come to us and said, our audience love 2D platform games. Go and make a 2D platformer. However, the curriculum that they want us to teach in terms of the Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 curriculum in the UK explicitly said that problems had to be set in the real world. And the real world has 3 dimensions. So trying to work these things out is a set of issues with your partner, with your client. So just zipping forward. Some of the issues that you get when working with a broadcaster. TV, lean back, group-oriented, friends, family. It's all about alpha waves, more neurochemistry. TV actually kind of hypnotizes you, and it makes you very mellow. And the opposite to that is that video games, actually, a good video game will make you create a bunch of dopamine. And dopamine is the chemical that you get when in your brain it's a reward chemical. It's go you. You've done something right, or something has happened that you were expecting, and it's nice and rewarding. And TV or broadcasters tend to think that things should be about alpha waves. They should be about trying to make this sort of this sensation of comfort and invitation, especially family content. But video games are all about dopamine. So that caused some interesting conversations. And then TV guys also typically sort of think about things in terms of narrative about the hero's journey, which is a narrative construction that has a few different versions of this, archetypal stories that basically have someone being called onto a quest, refusing the quest, then going, oh, go on then, meeting a mentor who mentors them through it, and then the process of going on this quest changes them forever, and they return home to a changed world. It's archetypes like that that broadcasters are very familiar with, but games aren't about that normally. Again, narrative in games is a thing. Like, what's the narrative of Tetris, for example? There is a narrative. Block came, block didn't come, but really that's it. And it's actually a very powerful narrative. But it's about the loop. You construct loops, and again, trying to navigate very linear, plot-based TV programs being transferred over to a non-linear interactive medium is quite tricky. And the final one is, again, TV, you watch it passively. In a game, you have agency. And when you watch a TV show, you watch Doctor Who, you don't think that you're the Doctor. You may empathize with him, but you're not him. And if you ask someone to suddenly be the Doctor inside a video game, then X years of think you're not the Doctor. You can't do that stuff, and things like that can be sort of quite frustrating. And finally, I'll just zip through this. This is one of the biggest areas of working with a broadcaster that can be really frustrating. When you make a TV show, it's done. There is my file. Thank you very much. Where's my check? Software is never finished. It's abandoned. It's all got bugs in it. That's just, I've just held my tongue. All software has bugs. This is an issue. TV is written and produced. Software isn't. It's designed, and it's designed with empirical data about very specific users. And if it's not designed from a user-centered perspective, it always fails. And finally, a script. I get given a script. I can take that script out and I can realize it on what they used to call film. But that's not the same when you're making software. In software, you get a bunch of things that you want it to do, and you may not get, in fact, you never will. You won't get around to finishing all those features, to coding them up. Now, navigating that, you're given money by a broadcaster, and you have to say to them, well, this may not ever actually get done. I hope you know that. in the way that you're thinking. Not all of the things that we said we were going to do can be done, and it's not just us. We're really good at what we do. It's normal. Okay, thank you very much. That's about it. Thank you. Oh, there was one thing. This is why they want to do it. False end. Because something like Top Gear gets 350 million viewers a week, and Super Bowl 2014 got a third of that when it happens. One forgets how big international telly brands are. So you can applaud me again now. Thank you. So, any questions?
Hi, thanks for your talk. What are the reaction of the kids on the concept? Are you play testing all the time to check that? And is the game published now already or not?
It was out. It came out yesterday on iOS.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it's just restricted to people in the UK, but iOS, Android, and Kindle. But you can play it. Anyone can play it on the BBC's website because we authored it in Unity. So if you have an iOS device, and you can try and look for it. Otherwise, you can play it in Unity or Android or Kindle. And the answer is yes. The game was absolutely intrinsically co-authored, really, with an educationalist, and also every single stage of what we were doing was done with a bunch of schools in the United Kingdom, in Wales, England, and Scotland. The outcome of it has been really, really heartening. I've kind of underplayed the role that the educationalists and the BBC played in this, but the BBC is a trusted brand, and to see this game being used in schools is absolutely fantastic. People really, really love it. So, it went down very well.
Okay, thanks.
Do girls like it as much as boys?
So the question was, do girls like it as much as boys? And it's a fantastic question. This was one of the things that we wrangled with in this game very often, because even when one is doing level design, there's different sorts of levels. Now, it would be sexist and simplistic to say girls like puzzles, boys like shooting things. Our research sort of said that there is a gendered balance in terms of level design like that, which is why exactly that we wanted to push for as much sort of puzzle-based fun in the game as we possibly could, and also because there's enough games where things get shot. And it should be said that in this game no one actually gets shot at all. People get stunned. Okay, so then there are no guns. There's a stun thing inside the game. I don't have specific data in terms of whether girls liked it more or not than boys. Anecdotal data has seen the fact that everybody seems to like it in the classroom, and everyone seems to like it at home. All I can say was the thing that we considered.
I actually had a question which I was very interested in. In my experience, broadcasters in general, they don't get games even when they try to do them. So how are you able to overcome this problem and make such a great game?
Well, that's another really good question. Ouch, how do I answer that? Again, we were very lucky with this specific client. Doctor Who is a very forward-looking brand at the BBC, and there's a very forward-looking team on it. And we're very lucky to have, there's a guy called Richard Jenkins, who's the producer from the BBC side, whose games, in his blood. And that was very handy. But yes, there is an issue. And, the BBC is working very hard to come up to get around this, but it's related to some of the things that I mentioned before. For example, for a brand that's so important to the BBC as Doctor Who, every single piece of tiny design, and one version of this presentation had different iterations of the hero character of the Doctor as it was iterated. And the tiny things like where an eyebrow comes or not, and the exact shape and the amount of polygons that we use to make the little balls on the side of the Dalek. These things are hugely important to the overall visual cohesion of the brand. They're very important to BBC, for example, as branded stuff. They're less important to gameplay. And, this was a negotiation that we had when we were trying to prioritize taking the money that we had and make the best game on the end of it, rather than reflect the existing Doctor Who brand as well as we possibly could. And that's not to say that's not important. It's hugely important from the BBC's perspective, and understandably why. And one can understand why.
Are there any more questions? Oh, there's one back there. Max, can you get that?
Hi. Maybe an unfair question, but do you think you have improved on Scratch?
No. Hell no. No, Scratch is absolutely fantastic. But we didn't try to. What we've tried to do is something completely different to Scratch. Scratch is a general purpose development environment, and it's fantastic. What we tried to do was something very different, which was to make a great, fantastic, fun game that introduced people who hadn't come across Scratch to the basic principles of coding. Now, I mean, the thought that must have gone into and resources, frankly, that must have gone into Scratch were enormous, and it just wasn't either within our budget or our resources or really our objectives to try and mimic what they were doing.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, then I'd really like to thank Paul Bennun. Thank you.
Thank you.